There is a famous quote attributed to Alfred North Whitehead that says, "All of Western philosophy consists of a series of footnotes to Plato." This quote resonates so deeply because in the classical period of Western philosophy, specifically in the writings of Plato and Aristotle, we see the first conversations of the nature of the human person, epistemology, metaphysics, and the various schools of philosophy. In order to reason correctly, it is appropriate to familiarize ourselves with this ancient period, specifically the writings of Plato and Aristotle. If a question is being asked by modern persons, there is a tremendous likelihood that this question has already been addressed, has already been wrestled with, and discussed deeply by these monumental thinkers. In this video, we will briefly walk through 5 critical themes of philosophy, specifically through the lens of Plato and Aristotle, so that we may walk away with a deeper and richer understanding of philosophy. For Plato, the essence of man is his soul. Plato, the soul is immortal and pre-existing, while the human body is material and temporary. Plato offers arguments for the immortality of the human soul in his dialogue Phaedo, where he states the principle of opposites, that all things spring up from their opposite states. So living things turn into dead things, and conversely, living things spring up from what is dead. Therefore, just as the souls of the dead in the underworld come from the living things in this world, living souls come back from those of the dead. Therefore, everything that dies comes to life again in this cycle of reincarnation. Thus, Plato's works are greatly preoccupied with the health of the soul, this essence of man that lasts. For Plato, the soul has a tripartite structure consisting of the rational element, the spirited element, and the appetitive element. In the Republic, Plato uses the image of a city to explain the workings of the human soul. In the Republic, the rational element of the soul is analogous to the philosopher kings which lead and govern the city. The spirited element of the human soul is analogous to the soldiers that protect and carry out the orders of the philosopher kings, and the appetitive element of the human soul is analogous to the common everyday people and their desires. The virtue of justice occurs in the human city and in the human soul when these 3 parts work in harmony with one another. The soul works best when reason is in charge, and our will, that spirited appetite, helps us determine to do the right thing, to engage our will to choose the good, because our appetites left unchecked can lead us to do unhelpful things. Therefore, the good person, the good city, is the one that is led by reason. For Aristotle, conversely, the human person is a composite of form and matter. It is hylomorphic, with the soul being the form and the body being the matter of the person that creates their substance. Aristotle, in his work De Anima, describes the 3 kinds of souls, this actualizing principle that is the animating principle of life. And the first kind of soul is the vegetative soul, which is possessed by plants, allowing them to feed and reproduce. The second, the animal or brute soul, allows for locomotion and movement. And the third kind of soul is the rational soul, the ability to grasp universals, the ability to possess reason. And the human person possesses a rational soul, possessing all the powers of the vegetative, the animal, and the rational soul. Consequently, Aristotle's famous definition of the human person is a rational animal. Plato's theory of knowledge is built upon his understanding of metaphysics, and therefore, knowledge is remembering truths from the soul's pre-existence in the realm of the forms. As we'll discuss later on, this realm of the forms is the realm of the perfect, unchanging, eternal ideas or forms, things as they really truly are. And therefore, knowledge is remembering these forms, and it's not through experience, it's not through sense perception, but true knowledge is attained a priori through reason, to attain true knowledge of the forms. Additionally, Plato contributes the idea of the divided line to show and describe the different levels of understanding moving from belief to true knowledge. The lowest level of the divided line is the world of images, or ikasia. It's the lowest level because it's only perceiving shadows or reflections or images. This is the lowest and least reliable realm of knowledge. The next level up is belief, or pistis. This is perceiving objects, but remember, objects are only as real as they participate in the perfect realm of the forms. So because these objects are changing and material, it's not true knowledge quite yet, but it's better than the world of images. Further up is thought, or daionia, such as mathematics and abstract concepts. This is so close to the forms, but it's still reliant on the material, apparent world that it's not quite that last level of knowledge yet. Finally, the highest level of knowledge is understanding, or noesis, and this is direct apprehension of the forms through our reason, which results in true knowledge. This logical process is explained through the use of mythos by Plato in the famous allegory of the cave. People at first trapped only perceiving the shadow, images, reflection of the objects that pass by the fire upon the wall. These people are freed to leave the cave and see real objects, not shadows anymore, but real objects revealed by the light of the sun, which is analogous to the form of the good. This allegory demonstrates the movement of the philosopher from shadowy images to the true rational knowledge and apprehension of the forms, ultimately the form of the good, which is analogous to the sun, which makes all things intelligible. If Plato greatly emphasized a priori knowledge, Aristotle greatly emphasizes a posteriori knowledge, knowledge from experience. Aristotle in his De Anima explains that human beings are born as a tabula rasa, or a blank slate, and they gain knowledge through direct experience or perception of the external world. While Aristotle's epistemology begins with empiricism, this knowledge from sense experience, it's not strictly limited to it. There is also the intellectual power of abstraction. Aristotelian realism holds that universals don't exist independently of particulars, but that they exist in particulars. When we know an object, we're not just knowing a shadowy reflection of a perfect form, but our mind is able to abstract the essence, the form, the universal of that object. Therefore, the mind receives a sense object, the agent intellect works on the object to strip it of particularity until the universal essence is obtained. Then the passive intellect receives the universal and expresses the universal concept. Consequently, knowledge for Aristotle is the harmonious working of our senses and the power of our intellect to grasp extramental reality. For Plato, the highest of all the forms is the form of the good. In the Republic, Plato writes, "In like manner, the good may be said to be not only the author of knowledge to all things known, but of their being and essence. And yet the good is not essence, but far exceeds essence in dignity and power. Therefore, if sensible objects participate in the realm of the forms all participate in the form of the good." While not explicitly referred to as God, this form of the good is the eternal, unchanging, perfect principle that is the cause of all things. Additionally, as the previous quote describes, it can't be defined. It's transcendent, exceeding essence. In his work, the Timaeus, Plato describes the demiurge, a divine craftsman that shapes and makes intelligible the universe. While not creating ex nihilo, this demiurge is significant because Plato suggests a designer that shapes and creates the universe, looking to the realm of the forms to order things and make them intelligible. While not a personal God, the Platonic idea of the form of the good will be used by later Neoplatonic and Christian writers to explain God as first cause. And while not creating ex nihilo, but using already pre-existing matter, the demiurge provides helpful language to describe God as designer, as creating the universe intelligibly, with a purpose, with order, with a logos. Aristotle is largely responsible for explaining why the universe, why being needs a first cause at all. In his Physics, Aristotle explains that all change requires a cause. Being, or what is, has two co-principles: its actuality and its potentiality. There is ens in actua and ens in potentia. Actuality is what a real being actually is, and ens in potentia, potentiality, is what it's capable of becoming. All change can be described as a potentiality becoming actual, and things are made actual by another actual mover moving on a being which is in potential. Your body becomes actually cold based on the temperature of the room acting on your body. Hopefully, you become interested and stimulated to study philosophy because of this video. Therefore, Aristotle describes a series of causes and effects which cannot go on into an infinite regress, but requires a first cause. This first cause is an uncaused causer, an unenergized energizer, a fully actual actuality. In his work Metaphysics, Aristotle describes this first cause as the unmoved mover. Because the unmoved mover is pure actuality, it's eternal, unchanging, perfectly good, totally independent of the changing world. It contemplates itself. It is thinking about thinking about thinking, eternally pondering itself. Lastly, in the Aristotelian understanding of a final cause, the unmoved mover, or God, is what inspires or gives causal power to motion in the universe. It draws everything towards itself. It is the desire of all beings. Later, Christian philosophers such as Thomas Aquinas will synthesize the Aristotelian understanding of the unmoved mover who is pure actuality and the Christian God revealed through the sacred scriptures. Plato advocates that the human person is made for eudaimonia, or happiness, flourishing, well-being, and the virtues, or excellences, or perfections, are the characteristics needed to obtain this happiness. Remembering Platonic metaphysics, virtue is highly a matter of reason. Knowing the good allows us to do the good, remembering that everything is about remembering or coming to true knowledge of the forms. In his work Meno, Socrates is discussing with Meno about why human beings desire the good. And Socrates argues that no one willingly desires evil, but even evil is simply an ignorance of the good. People do harmful things because they don't know the good. They don't know that they're seeking harm. They think that they're attaining the good, but they're not well educated as to what good action is. Therefore, virtue is teachable. Recall in the Republic how in creating a program for the philosopher kings, certain stories are censored, certain stories are advocated for. In order to be virtuous, it is necessary to know the forms. Therefore, proper education is required. Future philosopher kings must study arithmetic and geometry in order to grasp the immaterial principles and structures that will lead them to knowledge of the form of the good, which will allow them to act properly. In Book 4 of the Republic, Plato outlines 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Remaining with the analogy of a city, temperance is associated with the working classes, knowing how to moderate their appetites. Courage, or fortitude, is associated to the warrior class that will allow them to fight strongly to ensure order. Prudence, or wisdom, is assigned to the philosopher kings, the rulers who can know the forms of the good and govern correctly. And lastly, justice stands above them, properly regulating their relations. Conversely, Aristotle, in his work Nicomachean Ethics, argues that virtue is the product of habit. For Aristotle, eudaimonia and virtue are the same pursuit. There are moral virtues and intellectual virtues. Moral virtues are attained by habituation, and intellectual virtues through education. What's important in intellectual virtue is what is called phronesis, or practical wisdom. It's one thing to be knowledgeable in the things of war, and it's another to go out and lead an army and win victories. What's important is bringing the intellectual knowledge into concrete action. Aristotle also suggests that virtue is found in the mean. For example, look at the virtue of courage. Courage is found in the mean between recklessness and cowardice. Another distinction to make about Aristotelian virtue is that Aristotle describes virtue as a hexis, or a stable condition. More than pure intellectual knowledge of the good, Aristotle wants a ready disposition that points and directs how a person feels and acts. And this person's steady state can be shaped by habit. We can change what we desire. By habitually doing the good, we can change our desire towards the good. In his Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle says, "We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts." Our ready state, our character, is shaped by our actions. Lastly, Aristotle argues that friendship is vital to be a virtuous person. Human beings are social animals. Naturally, we create a polis, or a community of persons. Aristotle states, "Friendship would seem to hold cities together, and legislators would seem to be more concerned about it than about justice." Virtuous friendships inspire virtue in each other and uphold the stability and health well-being of the community. Plato helps us understand evil with his concept of privation. Things are good inasmuch as they participate in their form, and evil is simply a lack of participation. Therefore, evil does not necessarily have an independent substance. It's simply an absence of good. This way of thinking is developed further by Neoplatonic philosophers who explain that as things move further and further away from their origin, they are less perfect, less substantial, less what they are. And therefore, the material world is the world of becoming. It is not the perfect, unchanging world of the forms. So matter is looked down upon. Matter is a source of mistrust or incompleteness. Matter is seen as an obstacle. We can see this in Plato's belief that the soul is the essence of the person, trapped or made prisoner or being contained in the material lacking body. When it comes to moral evil, ignorance is its source. Not having the proper knowledge of the forms leads to incorrect action. For Aristotle, goodness and being are convertible. Aristotle shares Plato's understanding that evil has no substance, but is rather the absence or privation of good. In terms of natural evil, limitations or natural disasters or imperfections in nature is a result of the contingency of the material universe. Because matter has potentiality, this results in a lack of perfection. In his Physics, Aristotle also explains the existence of chance in a teleological universe. As beings move according to their final causes, chance events occur, and this can account for certain natural evils or unexpected events. Aristotle promotes final causes, or teleology. Every being has a reason or a purpose for which it tends to. Therefore, a bad thing is a good thing that is spoiled. To not be good is for a thing to not be what it ought to be. For example, a chair with a broken leg cannot fulfill its function, and this is an imperfection. It cannot be what it was made to be, and this can be applied to human persons, rational animals as well. Aristotle writes in his work The Politics, "A human being is the best of the animals when perfected, so he is also the worst of all when separated from justice. Devoid of virtue, human beings can become the most unholy and the most savage, and the worst when it comes to gluttony and lust." Lastly, Aristotle highlights the important role of free will when it comes to moral action. He writes in Book 3 of the Nicomachean Ethics, "Now if it is in our power to do noble or base acts, and likewise in our power not to do them, then it is in our power to be virtuous or vicious." In closing, a proper understanding of the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle is imperative when engaging with Western philosophy. Upon the foundation of Platonism is built the one of Plotinus, the understanding of the Christian God of St. Augustine, the concept of innate ideas of Descartes. Aristotle will give fuel to the great Islamic thinkers, will give language for Thomas Aquinas' famous ipsum esse subsistens, and pave the way for empiricists such as Locke, Bacon, and Hume. If Western philosophy truly is a series of footnotes to Plato, let us not be too eager to discard thinkers such as Plato and Aristotle because they are ancient. Rather, let us search for what is timeless in them so that we can construct a proper philosophy for the 21st century.